General Grievous was known as the Jedi killing machine during his era in the Clone Wars. Since there were very few actual Sith running around at this point, if a Jedi were to come into contact with a lightsaber-wielding foe, they would have to settle with the displeasure of the droid general who wielded 4. The devastating effect that Grievous had on the Jedi was compounded by the fact that he had been trained by one of the greatest swordsmen of the entire era, and maybe of all time, in the former Jedi Master, Dooku. Darth Tyrannus was a prodigy to say the least. His gift with the lightsaber was unparalleled. Dooku had studied the discipline extensively since he was a young child. His dueling skills were so great that he managed to defeat a Jedi Master at the mere age of 14, and even Darth Sidious felt somewhat threatened by his skill with the lightsaber. But despite all of this, a question that many bring up is how is it possible that General Grievous is constantly defeated by Dooku with minimum effort? Ever since the single training scene in Star Wars The Clone Wars 2003, as well as novels, the question has arisen as exactly how someone as seemingly slow and aged as Dooku can easily beat General Grievous when young and energetic Jedi cannot. Again, the important thing here is Dooku doesn't just beat Grievous, he does so extremely easily. Well, my friends, today we are going to open a holocron and analyze both Grievous and Dooku, and explain why Dooku personally will likely always have an edge over the droid general. What makes this especially interesting though, is Darth Sidious had direct orders from Grievous to never engage Anakin Skywalker during the war, constantly holding Grievous back as he was perceived as a mad dog. And although Grievous would have to strike very luckily, Palpatine did not want to risk this rabid dog destroying his grand prize in a potential apprentice. This is relevant here because it shows that even Sidious knew that Grievous was extremely dangerous. And yet, Dooku handily defeats him time and time again. Before we get into the exact explanation, we have received a vision through the Force that many that visit our archives have not yet subscribed. So if you enjoy Star Wars and learning more about the lore every single day, reach out and crush that subscribe button. And now, let us enter the archives and begin. Let us first analyze Grievous. The typical consensus about the droid general is that he is an absolute monster, a killer that can basically destroy anyone in lightsaber to lightsaber combat. This is due to his cybernetic enhancements and his mind. These enhancements allow him to wield 4 lightsabers at once, and his cybernetically augmented mind essentially allows him to tap into the 7 forms of lightsaber combat and execute them perfectly, almost as if his mind is a supercomputer on dueling, allowing Grievous to transition from form to form seamlessly with near perfection. In fact, Grievous is one of the few individuals in all of the galactic lore that is able to achieve mastery of a lightsaber form without the use of the Force at all. But how exactly does Grievous approach a duel, and how is he trained by Dooku to do so? His main goal is to surprise and overwhelm many of his Jedi foes, causing them to lose focus and succumb to the barrage of lightsaber blades at his disposal. Grievous's mechanical strength cannot be understated, as his arms carry an immense amount of brute force behind each and every strike. Not to mention, Grievous keeps his Jedi opponents from using the Force by making sure they are constantly either distracted or afraid, though he does have contingency plans for more skilled Jedi. His claws digging into the ground allows him to evade strong telekinetic pushes or pulls. Not to mention in Legends continuity, Grievous can pull his arms and neck within his chest and hunker down into a pod in order to endure the strongest Force abilities, such as when he did this during the Battle of Coruscant. Only Jedi with the distinct advantage of being able to combat multiple opponents has ever stood a sufficient chance against Grievous. The 2 best examples being Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was the master of the Total Defensive Form 3, and Kit Fisto, the master of Form 1, Shi-Cho, whose wide-arching strikes are perfectly suited for dealing with multiple enemies and against multiple weapons. Everything we have talked about, by all accounts, should mean that the total devastation of someone like Dooku, who was the master of Form 2 Makashi. The Duelist form is perfectly suited for one-on-one lightsaber combat, which means that it should be, theoretically, weak against Grievous. There is no better lightsaber form that exists for the sole purpose of dueling one opponent than Makashi. However, the 3 broadest weaknesses of the form was that it was not very good against blaster fire, taking on multiple enemies, or for generating momentum. All things that Grievous has in his corner as strength. In contrast, the strikes and footwork of Makashi stress the importance of precision and disarmoring an opponent rather than generating pure brute strength. As a result, it wasn't as good at generating momentum in combat like Forms 4 or 5. A true master of Form 2 would know how to divide and isolate his opponents so that he could face them one at a time, something we have seen Dooku do several times, especially when dueling Obi-Wan and Anakin. However, I'm sure you realize that this sort of strategy would not work against General Grievous, especially when he has all 4 of his lightsabers activated. Not to mention, Grievous's natural ability to generate brute force should allow him to smash through Makashi's guard, overwhelming the Count with ease. By every account, all of Dooku's weaknesses are Grievous's strengths. The odds on paper stack up against Dooku in basically every single notable category, but the thing that we need to remember is that everything we mentioned is all just theoretical. What we mean by this, though, is Dooku knows the droid general inside and out. Dooku is the one who trained Grievous. Dooku is the one that taught Grievous how to butcher the Jedi, because Dooku, of course, was once a Jedi Master himself. In the training sequence in the Clone Wars 2003 series, we entered their duel with Grievous putting Dooku on the defensive side and keeping him on the back foot. However, the entire time, Dooku was easily deflecting the droid general's blades and harshly critiquing his form. Dooku says, "Stop using standard attacks. Focus on the unorthodox." We can already get a feeling for what's going on. Grievous at this point in time was mostly using regular and straightforward motions with his blades. Dooku, though, could see them coming a mile away. The reason for this is his ability to touch the Force, his skill, and his battle intuition. Something many forget is that when a Force sensitive is in the zone while in combat, they get quick, brief flashes of the next second or so in the future. This is how Jedi are able to predict their enemy's attack nearly perfectly, also allowing their blades to clash cleanly. Dooku lives in this element, and this is where he excels in a duel. His mindset easily slips into the place of peace and focus. Complete focus. Therefore, his intuition is higher than nearly any Jedi ever, and standard attacks are going to be effortless for Dooku to avoid. But here, something else interesting happens. Grievous does change his tactic, using his feet to attack while jumping around. But Dooku has a new criticism for him. How often must I tell you? Control my center line. Dooku is berating the general for one of the most basic dueling tactics. To put it simply, a duelist's central line is the path of motion on which they move. For many, this is forward, backward, and then side to side. The central line of motion is how a duelist calculates the trajectory of their footwork, which in turn directs how they will strike. Dooku tells Grievous that if he is able to control the center line, he would effectively be controlling the path in which his enemy would move, able to close off opportunities for attack or escape. Dooku then reminds the droid general that if he is going to win, he must destroy his focus. As they continue, Dooku tells the general that he's holding his saber too tightly, but the Sith Lord easily slaps it out of his hand and says, "Now too lightly." In 4 distinct instances within 30 seconds, Dooku completely dismantles Grievous, picking apart every single one of his weaknesses and small imperfections in what should be a perfect form. His lesson is, do not use standard attacks, control the center line, destroy your opponent's focus, and have a proper grip on your lightsaber. Dooku was a master of Makashi, and as Kenobi put, things such as leverage, footwork, and positioning came as naturally to him as breathing did. All of these critiques of Grievous goes to show just how far beyond the general that Darth Tyrannus really was. On the outside, Grievous is intimidating, and it feels impossible that anyone could defeat him. But Dooku pulls back the layers was because he was able to destroy a Jedi's focus and terrify them. Dooku's lesson to Grievous, like I keep telling you, General, if you are to beat the best of the Jedi, you must have fear, surprise, and intimidation on your side. For if any of these elements are lacking, it would be best for you to retreat. You must break them before you engage them. Dooku is not afraid of the droid general in the least. He knows that he can dismantle him with hardly any real effort whatsoever. Dooku, though, is a Sith, and although Grievous can surprise and scare a Jedi, I believe that this would never work against a member of the Sith Order. Trying to use fear and intimidation on a Dark Lord would not work whatsoever. The Sith have transformed anger and fear into power. But to illustrate things even further, Let's explore a quote from Vader. Vader ended up dueling a recreation of General Grievous during the era of the Empire, another cybernetic monster that utilized 4 lightsabers. But when confronting this enemy, Vader simply said this: "When you have the power of the dark side, all you need is 1 lightsaber." But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on Dooku having the easiest time against General Grievous than anyone in the entire lore? Does this give you more insight into the droid general and his master? And who among the Jedi, besides Kenobi, would pose the best chance against General Grievous? As always, my friends and acolytes, thank you so much for watching the channel today. It absolutely means the world to me, as there is no channel without all of your support. Thank you so much, and may the Force be with you.